Well, we move now to bishop g5 on move 5 by white, a move in the true Queen's Gambit style. But the fact is that white is allowing black the chance to capture on c4, and it's an opportunity I think he should take, because white is being challenged directly to find compensation for the pawn. I believe d takes c4 to be a sharp and very playable move, and let's take a look at it now. Going to use the game Joel Lautier, Grandmaster versus Van den Doel, from the Antwerp tournament in 1998. And of course, with d takes c4, black is simply threatening to swamp white with his queenside pawn majority, in a similar style to the Botvinnik variation of the semi-Slav. E4 would be a move in the Botvinnik variation mould, but the fact is black has not moved his e-pawn yet, so it's totally different. This gives black many more options. For instance, after e5 in this position, I mean, that would be the Botvinnik move. There, in the Botvinnik variation, black would have to play h6 in such a position. Well, here I think he can simply play knight d5. And if white doesn't crash through somewhere, those queenside pawns are going to win the day for black. So that is why this variation can be recommended. I think that the queenside pawns are really unpleasant for white to have to face, because he's already committed himself. There's no plan B, and white's got to sort of go forward with all possible speed. Well, in the game Langheinreich versus Kindermann, Bundesliga 2001, white tried bishop e2. I'm doubtful whether that move can be any good in this position, simply because black is able to develop his pieces with speed. He's still a pawn up. His centre seems to be reinforced. White is struggling to find compensation, but I just wonder after bishop b4 whether he has done so. I mean, it's all a question of taste once again, but I very much doubt whether white has enough compensation for the pawn in this position. So that's e4. Going back, a4 is the usual move, and this is the move that Lautier chose here. Throwing a spanner in the works to a certain extent, because black now can't play b5. The black rook on a8 is undefended, so white could take twice on that square. Let's just see that for the sake of completion. Thank you very much. And black can't recapture the knight. That is not desirable at all. So bishop f5 is a good move here, inviting white to take on f6 and give up the two bishops. But at the same time, it's a very solid move, and well, eventually black hopes to get round to playing b5. And now there are several moves for white. In the game Lautier Van den Doel, white played knight e5. But let's take a look at the direct move first, bishop takes f6, because with this move, white enforces the e4 pawn advance in the centre. Black should play bishop g4 against that. Bishop takes c4 and now take on f3, again in the style of the Slav. Well, white's hand's forced again. If he takes with the queen, d4 drops. And now you begin to see the reason why black plays this variation, and why taking on f6 might not be such a good idea for white, because you begin to wonder where white's going to put his king. I think the white position is absolutely fine here, as long as he can find a safe haven for his king. Well, of course the king can stay in the centre, but given that we've got a kind of opposite colour bishop middle game coming up, it's hard to see where white's going to gain any sort of advantage from in this position. I think he's got some problems with his king. Let's just see some analysis. In the game Marr versus Ferguson, Whitley, 1998, white tried knight e2, and black played queen e7, but I think castles is a much better move. Intending after rook g1, king h8, this would be my improvement on Marr versus Ferguson. And now, however white plays, I think black is getting counterplay with the help of a well-timed c5. For instance, after f4, black can play the immediate c5, opening up the centre. The knight will come to c6 perhaps, and well, black is not worse. White can try to castle on the queen side in this position. Black simply develops and tucks his king away, white, but then b5 comes. And if anybody, you have to prefer black in this position with the queen side opening up. Finally, a move suggested by my old buddy Fritz in this position, king f1. presumably just getting the king off the dark squares. But then once again, after knight d7, f4, c5, you know, the position's opening up, and well, white could play d5 in this position, but then black's bishop is better. There's no reason to suppose that in the coming middle game black's chances will be any worse in this type of position. So bishop takes f6 is a very committal move for white. He does get the centre, but as you've seen, black has adequate counterplay. Going back to bishop f5, what else is there? Well, there's the very modest move e3. I very much doubt whether white can claim any advantage after that whatsoever, although he does get his pawn back with bishop takes g5. But let's just take a look. Knight e4 is a good reply. Take off the bishop, go e6. White goes f4, black plays bishop e7. Nothing wrong with black's position. White can settle for the modest retreat with knight f3, but once again black develops very, very comfortably, and with bishop d6 has a very decent position. So if white wants to challenge the black setup, he's probably got to try knight e5. Okay, knight e4. Knight takes e4. Bishop takes e4, f3, and now the very sharp move f6, issuing a challenge to white. And again we get a fairly forced sequence where white takes on e4, black takes on e5 note, e3, and now queen a5 check. And I think that move simply forces the exchange of queens, because of course if white moves his king in this position, black takes on d4, uncovering an attack against the loose bishop on g5. So queen d2 is forced. We take again, and then we hit out in the centre by playing e5. And as you've seen, this is quite a well-known position. Well, what's going on? It's really difficult to say. The white king is stuck in the middle. With e5, black is threatening to break up the white centre. After bishop takes c4, e takes d4, you can see why white goes in for this variation. He entertains hopes of an attack against the black king. But I believe, I hope that black can defend this position. And let's see how now. Well, first of all, he kicks off with h6. That's quite a useful move, because at a certain moment black can repel the bishop by playing g5 perhaps. And white now has two moves. Bishop f7 check is the forcing move, and after king d7, bishop f4. Then comes bishop b4 check. I think without this move the black position would be distinctly unattractive, but the fact is bishop b4 check allows the rook to come to f8. Bishop g6, king e7. Now we see how useful the move h6 was, because bishop g5 is prevented. e5, c5, bishop g3, knight c6, king e4, and now in the game Zaja versus Kulasevich, Medulin, 2002, black played king d7, but I think I found an improvement here for black with d3. And the idea of that is that if white takes on d3, we go rook a d8 check, king e3, king e6, all of the black pieces are now in play. Rook takes f8, rook takes f8, king e4, and now knight into d4. So d3 was a clearance sacrifice, and well, it seems to me that black is fine in this position. If we count the pieces, it's level. You know, by giving back that pawn, white has levelled the score on material, but I can't help but feel that his king will be vulnerable in the play to come. So this position seems pretty good for black to me. So going back to h6, Lautier preferred bishop h4. g5 came, bishop g3. Again, we should take a look at bishop f7, checking this position. King d8, and now white has two retreats with the bishop. He can retreat to f2, hitting the pawn at d4, but I think black should just simply protect that pawn. And after king d3, protect once more by going c5. White can attack b7, but black defends comfortably. Okay, white goes after the pawn at c5. But now rook b8. and I think black is fine in this position. The rook's coming down to attack the white king, perhaps b2 drops, okay, c5 drops. It's a fairly level game. Back at king d8, bishop g3 could be preferred. Against that, I think black should simply get his pieces out. Knight comes out, threatening perhaps a check on c5. This is why white tries to stop that check. But king e7 is again a very useful move here, connecting the rooks. Best play then seems to me to be rook af1, rook hf8, b4, b5, and now black organises counterplay with the help of the move c5. If white plays e5 in this position, black's got nothing to fear, he just goes through with c5. And who's to say the white king is not more vulnerable than black's king in this particular position? So I think we're getting the flavour of this variation. Complex play, but in no way worse for black, as long as he is accurate. Now let's just see the course of Lautier van den Duel now. Bishop g3 was answered by knight d7, rook came into f7. Black developed his pieces, and now Lautier doubled up. And I've had no doubts whatsoever that white was feeling very optimistic in this position, because he seems to have all his pieces in play, and two extra rooks pounding down against the black king. But, well, just take a look at what happened. Black hit out with b5. White doesn't want files opening on the queen side in this position, so Lautier retreats with bishop a2. And then comes rook f8. And I think that move nullifies any white pressure. More than that, because white must remember in this position that he is in fact a pawn down. And if the pieces come off, that extra pawn is going to make all the difference. So white's got to force the pace, basically. You know, he can't go in for ideas like a5 blocking, because then bishop b4 check, king e2, rook takes f7, and then rook d8. Again, demonstrate that the extra pawn is passed, it's on d4, and it's coming down all the way. So this is why, after rook f8, Lautier decided to force the pace. Okay, knight c5 was played. e6. And now black actually could even take on a4 in this position. But that's a computer move. He decided to play the human move, knight e4 check. And I think this is a move which gives him a fairly safe advantage with no particular problems. Why? Because black can actually liquidate here, take off some pieces, and force a winning endgame. Rook takes f7. E takes f7 check. King f8, bishop e6, white still trying to force the pace here. But once again, black can cope comfortably in the reduced material situation we now have on the board. And c5. So a typical case of the white attack exhausting itself, and now the tables turn. Black goes on to win. Let's just see how. White tries to halt the advance of the pawns. Black is expanding. g4, h takes, bishop takes, king takes f7, bishop h5 check, king g7, rook e8. White's trying to keep as active as possible, but as long as black can come around to playing the move c4, white's goose is going to be cooked. I mean, I don't think in the long run white could stop that move. And so it proved. c3, excellent move with the time control reached. This was game over. Let's just see why. King takes c6, c2, rook e1, d3. And we're not going to be able to stop those pawns. So a cute finish. So basically, to summarise the variation with bishop g5, it's a sharp move. It's a move which challenges black, but if black accepts that challenge with d takes c4, he goes a pawn up. He creates a position similar to the Botvinnik variation, but not the same, because black hasn't moved the pawn at e7. And, well, this variation is looking good for black at present.